Okay, people, hey, welcome to the Mighty Crown YouTube official Yes channel. 今日は皆さん、はい、今日はいつもと違ったジャンルのヒップホップの超有名な DJ、もうレジェンドですね。今日は彼とのインタビュー、非常に俺も楽しみにしております。もう俺もすごい影響を受けまくってる、DJ の一人なんですけど、はい、じゃあもう今日は早速みんなにね、こういうやばいレジェンドがやっぱりいろんなこうシーンを作ってきたっていうことをね、分かってほしいということで、はい。Alright, today people, we got the legendary, none other than DJ Stretch Armstrong! welcome, Stretch.
What's up, man? How you doing?
What's going on, man? How's everything?
Everything is good, and it's a little bit better knowing that I have an electronic connection to Japan right now. One of my favorite countries, which I don't get to visit as much as I did back in the day. I still come once in a while, but the thing about getting a little bit older and things changing is that you start to appreciate things a lot more. So when I go to Japan now, I try to stick around longer than I used to. I used to come to Tokyo and DJ one night, go someplace else and just dip.
Yeah. Like you used to come here from the early 90s, right?
Yeah, starting in 93, I think. I've been 29 times.
Yeah. What? Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, people, you definitely know, like, the amount of time he's in Japan, you know how legendary this man is. This man has done so much for this music industry, people. So I'm so excited to have you today. So today I want to start off with, well, you're born and raised in New York, right?
That's right. New Yorker, all the way.
Which part of New York are you from, and what kind of neighborhood, like, you grew up in?
I guess that's always a good question, no matter where you're from, because that can determine so much about, where you end up. But I grew up. I grew up in an upper middle class family. Like, I'm probably I have the least typical background of anyone emerging from the hip hop scene in the very late 80s, early 90s. Like, what I ended up doing as a career, was not supposed to happen. It was just not, that wasn't it. I went to private school, and luckily I had parents that were very open-minded. If you go back like 3 generations in my family, you'll find photographers, architects, painters, conductors, composers, musical instrument makers. So I think, my parents knew that creativity and art were sort of natural to me, which is why when I chose to become a DJ, it wasn't something that they opposed. They kind of encouraged me to just follow whatever my passion was. I grew up on 96th Street between Madison and Park, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Upper East Side, but that's the border between the Upper East Side and Spanish Harlem. Literally, my block, East 96th Street, on my side of the block, you have like an 18-story building, with an awning and a doorman, and across the street you've got 5-story tenement buildings. Like, it just changes, right? Like, so the windows in our apartment look north, so I saw Spanish Harlem. I didn't see Park Avenue. Like, I'm looking uptown, and I went to a school that was really mixed in terms of like socioeconomic background and sort of racial distribution. So a lot of my friends were Latino or Black. So I'd go to Harlem even when I was younger, and I was afraid to go to Harlem. But my father insisted that I go to anywhere I had a friend. Like, you got to go to their house. So my dad would take me to Harlem and drop me off, and I'd be like, a little bit like shook. Like, you know, I knew I was going to be with my friend who was going to look out for me, but still, like, you know, in those neighborhoods, like the kids, they played in the street, you know, and it's like, so it was all ages, and like, you know, they knew I was like soft and whatnot, you know, and they took advantage of that. They would play pranks on me to scare me and like try to terrify me. But I think they also appreciated that I wasn't scared to come up to a neighborhood that, you know, we're all taught at a very young age to be afraid of a lot of things that we shouldn't be afraid of, right? Like, you know this because you travel between cultures and worlds all the time, just professionally.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we don't do it even because it's like a necessary evil. We do it because we love it. Like that's like been the most amazing thing about music is how just the music itself obviously affects you in such an incredible way. Like we love music, but also we love all the people we've met in music and all the places we've been and learning what is behind the music. And that's what makes the music so much stronger. So, you know, just taking it back to my childhood, like, there was just an appreciation there for, I think for me, being willing to go to places that like a lot of other like white kids would be afraid to go just because that's what they're taught.
Yeah.
You know?
I see.
You see.
That's very interesting. Like a lot of people don't know these kind of stories, so I really like, you know, appreciate listening to the stuff like that. So definitely the famous Stretch Armstrong and the BOBBITO show. You started off this in Columbia University, right? Yeah. So, God, how did it go down? It was so, you know, first of all, there's a movie that we made about the radio show, and it's called Stretch and BOBBITO Radio That Changed Lives. It was on Showtime for like 3.5 years. It was on Netflix until like 6 months ago, but you can still get it on iTunes and whatnot. And the movie, you know, it gives a pretty good telling of the story. We try to fit a lot into 90 minutes, but basically, I met Bob I think in the spring of '90, and we became like incredible friends super quick. He was working at Def Jam. I was DJing at Mars and MK and clubs like that. Okay.
And then I got a chance to be on the radio at the school I was going to. I was going to Columbia University for college. And, you know, at the time I was, you know, I may not have been afraid of going to neighborhoods where there were no white people, but I was definitely afraid of being on the radio and talking. So I had this idea. I was like, yo, I should have Bob, like have Bob talk. Like he's Puerto Rican, like, you know, he talks that talk. Like, I just wanted to play the music. So Bob was like, yo, I'm with it. Let's do it. And there's so many pieces to the puzzle of us getting on the radio. And if any one of those pieces hadn't come about, the whole plan would not have worked. But like everything fell into place. I mean, it felt like divine intervention. Like, how are we? Like, we were just talking about doing radio, just fantasizing about it, and then like 4 months later, we're on the radio in New York City in 1990. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
That's like some very historical. So you have a lot of big famous artists on your show.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that we had that big artists on the show. It was that most of the time when those artists came through, it was their first time on the radio.
Oh, wow.
It was often before they had money. It was often before they knew whether they would have a career. It was often at a time when all they knew was that they loved doing what they were doing and they didn't know where it was going to go. And, you know, some of those artists are Biggie from March 1992. Wow. He wasn't even signed to Bad Boy yet. Nas came up in 91, 3.5 years before his record dropped.
Wow.
He came up with Lord Finesse and Akinelli. DMX came up in 90, years before he blew up.
Wow.
The Fugees came up when no one was really checking for them, including me. Lauren killed it. She killed it that night. She killed it. Fat Joe, then he brought Big Pun up when he was, just coming out. Mobb Deep was a fixture of our show, even when they were the Poetical Prophets, before they were Mobb Deep, before they got signed to 4th and Broadway Island, and then before they got signed to Loud. Jay-Z, Big L, Pharoah Monch, Wu-Tang, Busta Rhymes. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty impressive roster when you break it down.
Yeah, that's crazy list of names, man. I'm telling you, man. So everybody knew your radio, was popping. All these artists who wasn't even big at that time, they all wanted that promo, the exposure, right?
Yeah, it's the 80s were dominated by WBLS and KISS. There were other shows, on WNWK, Special K, Teddy Ted, World Famous Supreme Team. These are all shows that existed throughout the 80s at different times. But the heavyweights with the most influence were Red Alert, primarily Chuck Chillout as well, and of course Mr. Magic and Marley Marl, and then Marley after Magic left, and those shows were on the weekend, and when hip hop was really in its infancy, in the early 80s and mid 80s, and those shows like that, well, mid 80s really, they would, this is just my take, but Marley, Red, Chuck, they would play anything that was dope, any record from anybody. I sensed that as the industry grew and more money came into it, and as those two stations became more and more prominent, to me, they lost a little bit of their willingness to play anything. So when I got on the radio in 90, I had no allegiances to a crew, nothing. It was just yo. And I was pretty much unknown. I mean, people knew me downtown because I was playing in clubs, but no one really knew who I was. So, I didn't really, there were no political motivations to anything I was playing.
No strings attached, yeah.
No strings, but I'd be in the record stores every day buying all the records that were just incredible to me. I mean, incredible. I mean, and I'm talking about all genres, but I was doing a hip hop show, so I would just be trying to get up on all the latest stuff that would separate what I was doing from, we're always trying to separate ourselves from everybody else, right? That's that's the essence of what we try to do as DJs.
Yeah.
Walk that line between playing music that's familiar and gonna get a response, but also how are you gonna stand out? So I was able to do that from day one and really make an impression, just because I was playing all this world-class music before anybody else was. And a lot of the time it felt other DJs had to catch up, and really we had that lane, even though the show was 1 a.m. on a Thursday night. We were just doing something that was so essential that the show just over time kind of blew up, with no promo, terrible time slot. It just happened.
So from Columbia, you went to the university and then started the radio there, but you were also on were you on Hot 97 or?
So in 1995 or 96, Hot 97 changed from being they were more like a Latin station. Okay. And then either they were bought. Well, I think it was was it MS? Anyway, they became part of a network of stations that some executive had in mind that this hip hop thing was becoming the next big commercial wave, and they need to start programming hip hop stations, in terms of like daytime, like 24-hour hip hop, like, or and when they were putting the station together, I know they were looking for a DJ to be like the linchpin of the station, and they did that by asking kids around the city, like, who's your favorite DJ? And it came, it was crazy. And Flex was already playing in clubs, and I was playing in clubs, and I got word that it was like they were actually considering me for that, but they ended up. And listen, Flex was 1,000 times more of an appropriate choice to be on Hot 97. I mean, I probably would have been miserable in that like sort of mainstream position. And Flex back then, I knew Flex back then. Flex was like super determined, super ambitious, and he always said like, "Yo, we don't know when this DJ shit, this hip hop shit is gonna end. Like, you got to make the most of it every day." So they went with him, but like I was told, it's like, "Yo, you're like," I was doing a party at Red Zone. It was like a big hip hop party, and because of that, they were like, "Oh, maybe Stretch would be a good person for that." But it ended up being Flex. This was back in like probably 95, and then a while later, once Hot 97 was already established, Drew Ha from Duck Down. He was making noise with Black Moon and everything, and I think because of the success of some of those early Black Moon and Nervous records, he had a relationship with Steve, who was the programmer at Hot 97, and he was like, "Yo, if your whole thing is gonna be the home of hip hop, like, and you don't have Stretch and Bob on your show, like that statement doesn't really ring that true, like in New York City." So we took a meeting with Steve, and he was like, "Yeah, like we should do, like, let's put you guys on, but you guys gotta, like, to do that, like I couldn't have you on WKCR, Columbia Station, and Hot 97, like, you'd have to stop that show." And we told him, like, we're not, like, that's not even up for negotiation. Yeah, so we ended up being like that rare, like that rare personality that is able to be on two stations at the same time, a commercial one and a non-commercial one. I think at the end of the day, they didn't really want to give us too much promo on Hot because we were still on the other station, and I think they just got a sense that we weren't going to play that whole kind of commercial radio game, which is it's not even, it's it is what it is. Bob and I are like, we're the type of people we are, and like maybe we could have ended up with like a more prominent time slot and this and that, but like we would never want to play music that we didn't love, and like that's what you got to do on commercial radio stations. Like you gotta play that game, and some people are happy playing it, so that's fine. Like I'm not knocking anybody else, but like just for me, like it wasn't working. And even when in 1999, I think, or 98, Bob stopped doing the Sunday show with me. I did it alone for like 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And that was cool because I got to play, more of the music that I was feeling at the time, which Bob wasn't feeling.
Okay.
Or haven't. So doing a show with someone when they're not feeling the music that you're playing, it's not enjoyable. And then when he left, I was free to do whatever I wanted. But even with that, like by 2001, I had kind of lost interest in what was happening in contemporary hip hop.
Okay. I mean, because why I asked you about the Hot 97 stuff is like the first time I ever knew Stretch Armstrong was through the Hot 97. I think I still have like one of the cassette tapes that you were playing, and then you were playing like some like Curtis Mayfield, like some stuff like you know, a lot of hip hop artists like sample from.
Right.
Like these, like you call it like the beats, like the instrumental.
Yeah.
You know, like Bob James, like them kind of stuff, and then that's how I knew who Stretch Armstrong was.
Right.
So Hot 97, you know, all these radio station guys, you guys made the right choice to put him on, because that's how I knew Stretch Armstrong. I mean, it's really incredible. And then how did you when did you start digging crates? Like when did you started DJing and stuff?
I started playing, I mean, I was buying records. I was music obsessed since I was like 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
I started playing drums when I was 4. You know, I would get a little bit of money from my parents, like starting at age 5, like enough to like save up and buy like an album like once a month.
Oh.
And you know, I liked all the typical stuff like a white kid would like in the 70s. So, you know, Elton John, Fleetwood Mac, Queen, the Beatles were my favorite. Then as I got older, like The Clash, Talking Heads, Tom Tom Club, Blondie, stuff like that. But then one day in school, all the kids that weren't white started rapping Rapper's Delight.
Okay.
Like they just came to school. This is 5th grade. So I don't know how old we are in 5th grade, like 11. They're like, hip hop, the hip to the hip hop. Yeah. I was like, yo, what is going on? This is amazing. What is this? And I bought that record that weekend, and then I started buying like, you know, everything on the Sugar Hill and Enjoy, and then I think like what really got me crazy was Run DMC, the first album. Like that just, you know, the older I got, the more into it I got.
Okay.
But and then, you know, when I was like 17, I actually saw a DJ for the first time at a club, and I was like, oh my God, this is wild. Because up to that point, like I'd only heard DJs on the radio, right? Like guys, you know, mixing and cutting. Like now, like a DJing is such a mainstream part of our culture, right? Like you see it in advertising and TV shows and whatnot, but you know, back then, like, you know, there were very few pictures taken in clubs. Like you really didn't have a visualization about what a DJ was doing unless you were going to park jams where they had DJs or house parties where they had DJs or clubs. But as a white kid from the Upper East Side, there were no park jams. There were no house parties with DJs, and I wasn't old enough to go to clubs. And finally, when I went to a club and I saw what a DJ did, I was like, oh, I'm doing that. And I already had records, so I was like, yeah. And I was already like trying to figure out how to DJ at home with like all the wrong equipment. Like I bought one Technics 1200, and then like I remember my parents went out of town for like 2 days, and I took their belt-driven turntable, had that turntable, my Techniques, and I took one of the outputs of my Techniques and I put it in the left phono input, and I took the other one and I put it in the right phono input, and I was mixing with the balance going left to right. In the middle was the mix. Left side was turntable 1, the right side was turntable 2.
Real old school style.
Yeah, man, you just gotta make it happen. You know, so then I was buying like club records, reggae records, dancehall records, and hip hop records, and then I think like, you know, like I bought all the ultimate breaks and beats, right? And like that was like just crazy because you're listening to these songs and you're hearing all the magic that happens in the rap records, right? Yeah. Like even I remember being younger and hearing, you know, Peter Piper came out and it was like the biggest rap record in the world, and it's still one of the best rap records ever, right? Run DMC, Peter Piper. When I heard Take Me to the Mardi Gras for the first time, I was like, yo, that's crazy. You know, it all comes together. You're like, oh, I see the connection between sampling these records and what a DJ like Jam Master Jay was doing with that record with MCs live, you know, a few years earlier in a park. Like I was like, oh, it all makes sense how the technology is letting them create a record that really emulates a live experience. That was really like, that fucked my head up.
How did you learn to DJ though? Like, did you learn it by yourself? Like, did somebody?
Yeah, I did. I learned just by listening, and then I've always been kind of a shy person when it comes to performing. So I was like, I can't play myself as a DJ. Like, I'm not going to let anyone see me play if my shit isn't tight.
Okay.
And I knew that didn't mean I have to be out there like scratching and getting busy. It just meant like my mixes had to be tight, the transitions had to be tight, things had to be on beat. So that's really what I focused on early on. And then when I got to go out and in particular see Clark Kent and like just how he did his thing, and like, yeah, if you heard me DJ, you wouldn't be like, oh, he sounds like Clark Kent, because I don't. I have my own way of playing, my own perspective, and I've never really had the kind of like musical and like bravado that someone like Clark has, or like a Kid Capri, right? They're really like, that's just never, like, my DJ style is like really like an extension of my personality, like, really, like, it makes sense. But watching, there's nothing like going out and watching DJs. I would spend, you know, I'd go to clubs and I would just park myself at the DJ booth and just watch the DJ all night. Like, I was one of those guys.
I see.
So when I see guys doing that, or women doing that with me, like, I don't discourage that. Like, stop. You know, of course now it's like everyone's playing Serato or CDJs. There's nothing to see. Like, you got to stand behind someone and read their computer screen, which you're not gonna do. You can't do that. But I used to get a lot of information just looking at labels.
Yeah.
You know, like, what is that? Oh, that's 4th and Broadway chest pressing. Okay. I was as resourceful as I could be. I used to have one of those Pro Walkman that recorded. Yeah. And I'd have the microphone, and I would look at what Red Alert was playing and be like, this is it's on, this is the label. And I remember like, the phone number on the label is 201. Yeah, I was bugging.
Wow.
I did a lot of homework.
I mean, yeah, that's
a lot of work.
So the first time I met you in flesh was at Deadly Dragon's record.
Deadly Dragon,
When you were digging the record, I was just a fan of you, and I'm like, yo, could I get a picture with you? And then it was
but I was tripping to meet you because what some people know is that like I'm a Jamaican music fanatic. Like, if I could do it all over again, I would have embraced that into my whole thing a lot more. Like, I used to go to Jamaica through the 90s, and like, you know, Dylan Powell is one of my best friends. You know Dylan?
Which Dylan who?
Yeah, Dylan Powell is Jamaican. He went to Columbia.
Okay.
He was going to University of Miami and he transferred to Columbia. He was doing a show called Reggae Rhythms on WKCR before my show.
Okay.
And he was the one, because he was like the only black guy at the station. So obviously they made anything that involved black music, they left it up to him. It was his decision. So when I got on the radio, and I didn't know this at the time, but the station manager asked him, Dylan, what do you think? He was like, yeah, nah, the show with the white boy and the Puerto Rican? Yeah, that's dope. Let's do it. So he's responsible for like kind of like making like my tryout lead to like a solid spot. And we became really good friends because every time I'd show up at the station, he was finishing up his show. And I got him a job at Big Beat where he signed Garnett Silk.
Okay, wow.
He signed Don Penn. He did the American release of Sister Nancy with a really bad remix that I did.
Okay.
And when I say bad, I don't mean bad. I mean bad. This shit sucks. I mean basura. Yeah, and like I'd go to Jamaica with him, and like we'd be in the studio with be like Junior Reid, like Buju, like when his dreads were like he was just twisting his hair to get dreads. Spraga, Don T, Roundhead, like all these dudes, like regularly, and like I mean I think at one point like I voiced a bunch of specials over the Boogie Down Productions, the KRS-One Black Cop, the Black Cop beat, which has a rock steady bass line over a hip hop beat that Pal Joey did, and I was on a 2-inch. I remember coming back to New York, and I'd been in the studio the whole time, and I was wearing the same jeans and the same jean jacket as when I got there. And the dogs at JFK were going crazy on me because they smelled the ganja, and they wanted to take apart the 2-inch. They wanted to unscrew the whole thing. I was like, and I told them, I was like, I've been in the studio in Kingston. Like, I was like, everyone was smoking weed, but I don't smoke weed. And I'm telling you, that's just a 2-inch tape. But, I never really, I don't know why with the amount of love that I have for Jamaican music and the access I had that I didn't do more with that. I mean, I think the hip hop thing was it was like the zeitgeist of hip hop, right? So it's like anything else just seemed like a hobby. But now I see like what's happened with like reggae internationally. I'm like, damn, man, it'd be exciting to be within that scene, but you can't do everything, you know.
I mean, you've been busy already, as you know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just I know your fans are like, you know, all these scenes are like interrelated, like hip hop and dancehall are cousins, if not brothers and sisters. Yeah. So I know your fans are interested in all this history. But I'm just telling you, like one-on-one, like when I met you, I was like, oh shit, Mikey.
Because like when I took the picture, you probably didn't even know. You probably thought I was just like a little tourist, like buying records.
No, I didn't know who you were, but I knew. I was like, who is that? I know that face, like I know. Oh, and then you left, and
I posted up the picture, like yeah.
But you probably were surprised to see me in a reggae store.
Exactly, and I was like, wow, like you know, it's Stretch Armstrong digging reggae records. What's going on? Because I didn't know like your whole passion to the reggae music and stuff, you know. Because
you know what's funny? You know what? Well, first of all, like it wasn't uncommon in New York to be like a specialist in different genres, you know what I mean? Like, look at Bobby Condors, right? Like, Bobby was like more known for deep house than dancehall at one point, you know? As a hip hop guy, like, yo, I would buy all my dancehall on 12-inch in the 90s. Yeah. In the 80s too, late 80s, not 12. Like, it's so crazy. Like, you're buying like 6 copies, you know, to have all the big tunes on the rhythm, right? Yeah. You know, like at like $4.99 a pop, and I'd only buy the 7 if it didn't exist on 12. Okay. You know, the last 5 years I've been replacing all my 12s with 7s.
Do you put like the 7-inch on top of the 12-inch and then spin it like as a 12-inch or?
If it was like something that I wanted to cut up more, yeah, but not for a reggae record. Not for a reggae record.
Do you still dig crates?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, listen, as you get older, your inner life changes. You become like different things mean something different to you as you get older, right? Like you learn more, and like there are records that I would not have liked 15 years ago that I love now. There are records I got rid of that I've had to buy again because I'm like, oh, it makes sense to me now. Even like on the like club music tip, like I remember like 126 beats per minute would have sounded like crazy fast. Like, oh, that's not my style. Now, like, it just feels great. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I mean, like when I was younger, like digging, like really playing dancehall mostly. Like, you know, and of course, just through that, you get into like all the foundation tunes like from the 70s, but like when I was younger, like Rocksteady didn't really resonate with me, you know. But I think that's because like I hadn't lived enough. Like all those Rocksteady tunes are about like so many of them are about like relationships gone wrong and love and like and yearning and like and just and of course you know social justice and you know politics and whatnot, stuff that like doesn't hit as hard for you when you haven't lived enough. And now I listen to those like I listen to Rocksteady at home like more than anything.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it just feels right, you know?
Who's your favorite reggae artist? Name me top 3. That's probably a hard question, right?
Yeah, I mean, so, I mean, that's fucking impossible. I mean, bands, we'll start with bands. I mean, my favorite reggae bands, you know, obviously the Wailers, but the first reggae artist I ever saw before I knew what reggae was Black Uhuru.
Okay, wow.
With Junior Reid. Opening for the Police in 1986 or 85.
That's crazy.
Let me tell you, that fucked my head up. And I bought Black Uhuru records the next day.
What age were you at that time?
I was like 12.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it wasn't 86. It was earlier. I was like 12 years old. This is what having cool parents leads to, because they let me go to concerts at that age by myself. They would take me there.
Yeah, that's crazy right there.
They would take me there and drop me off, and then pick me up.
Regular parents would be like, "Yo, are you crazy? Where are you trying to go?" Like,
shit. Regular white parents, they go. You know, when my parents let me go see the Clash. in 1982, and the opening act was Gregory Isaacs.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Wow,
that was crazy. But the thing is, I wasn't going to see Gregory. I didn't really know about Gregory like that. Like, so it was like, whoa. I mean, the other night at the same show was the opening act was Curtis Blow with AJ Scratch, and that's actually the first time I saw someone actually DJ.
Yeah, your mind is probably like so much genre and even just reggae alone.
I mean, there are artists that I love, like that don't have like the body of work that like a Dennis Brown or a Gregory Isaacs or a Barrington Levy has. I mean, like you really like you can't mention those guys. Those guys can't not be in your favorite, right? This is not possible.
So Black Uhuru was the first reggae act you ever saw, like as a band.
Yeah. And the second act was Steel Pulse.
Like, you see, like watching these kind of artists is like at a young age is kind of definitely built your personnel, I should say, I guess.
These are like you're driving down a road and you can go left or right, and like, you know what I mean? Like that, the road of life. It's like, I can't, it would be impossible for me to exaggerate how important things like that can be. And, you know, I think for people that are raising children or thinking about having kids, like, I think it's really important to raise your kids to be fearless, to not be afraid of all the things that society teaches you. You know, we're programmed to be afraid of people that don't look like us. And I think, you know, encouraging that curiosity and that desire to just go where, you know, your heart takes you is like, I'm really lucky to have had, you know, to have come from to be raised in an environment like that. But just to further, I mean, I was listening to Garnet Silk the other day. Like I don't think there's a 90s singer that for me can touch him. I mean, it's it probably you can never remove like your personal experience from how you learn about someone's music. So like for me, like my friend Dylan was like trying to sign him, and he did it. Like when Maxine was at Epic signing Shaba and Maxi, and like all the big labels were trying to get all the next stars, and Dylan was able to get Garnet to Big Beat Atlantic. That was like a big deal. Like I know other people are like, damn, how did we not get Garnet Silk? So I was kind of like, I had this interesting kind of vantage point. I went to the Q Club when he performed for his first time there, just shortly before he got killed, and that's just sort of like his what's the name of his album that Bobby Digital produced that had
It's Growing?
It's Growing. Like that album, like I just rinsed that album like just at home and in the car like non-stop. So it's just that record like really it hits.
These are the stuff like a lot of our people like don't know like about Stretch Armstrong. I love that.
Yo, man, your story is crazy. I mean, your story is crazier than my story.
No.
Yeah, it is. We're not gonna do your story right now, but I've only heard secondhand accounts about your whole journey from fan to world champion, like pillar. So and I want to have that conversation with you privately because I just want to learn because it's
definitely.
I just find it like it's really fascinating and incredible.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So my last question is, what's next for you?
So a bunch. So this fall, this October will be the 30th anniversary of the first radio show that BOBBITO and I did.
Wow.
And we have a label called 89 Tech 9.
Okay.
We're putting out a bunch of performances from the 90s. And we've taken those performances and extracted the acapellas, and we've been remixing them.
Oh, wow.
With our band, the M19s. We put a record out earlier called No Requests. Just as we were going to start doing promo on that, pandemic hit. But if anyone's interested, it's called Stretch and BOBBITO and the M19s, No Requests. So we're going to have this release of like all this like classic material like Jay-Z, Big L, Ghostface, Method Man, KRS-One, Lord Finesse, Busta Rhymes, with the original audio restored, sounding better than it did then, with remixes. And it sounds crazy. We got a 2.5 minute Biggie Smalls from 1992, just killing it over this beat I put together. It's bananas.
Wow.
So there's that. That's in the fall. Coinciding with that, Bob and I are going to have a radio show on Thursday nights on a very big international streaming platform, which I can't mention because the paperwork. We just can't announce it yet, but
it's not sealed yet. The deal hasn't
it's not sealed.
Sealed
the deal's
yet.
not sealed, but it's happening. It's happening. So
okay, wow.
Yeah, and then there's a even bigger thing happening, which I can't talk about at all. But Bob and I we put that movie out, Stretch and BOBBITO, Radio That Changed Lives, in 2015. We did 2 seasons on NPR, a podcast where we had like Dave Chappelle and Rakim and Beastie Boys and like just a lot of like incredible people. We've been DJing a lot together, just having a great time. There's like friends in music, and this fall and next year is going to be like a big kind of celebration around that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excited to your production, what you've been doing. Keep up the good works, and I really appreciate taking this time, and there's so much more questions I really would love to ask, but like
listen, let's do part 2. Let's do part 2 in the fall, when we got the music and everything. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
And then you and I we'll just find a time to kick it, just on some homie shit soon, and because I want to know, man.
There's so much stuff I want to know from you as well, man.
Cool, man. Well, yo, I'm honored that you have me here, and your shirt is cool as shit. What is that?
Thank you, man. This is like some traditional Okinawa. Is a message here. Like, how would I say it? It's hard to explain, but next time I'll
tell me later.
Yeah. Okay, people. We had Stretch Armstrong today. Well, great interview. Thanks a lot for your time. Enough respect. Arigato.
Arigato.